محبت ہوگی تو کس بلند آواز سے کہہ دیجیے سبحان اللہ. عذاب ڈرتے ہیں اور وہ بھی بھرتے ہیں جھولیاں سب کی. اللہ کی عطا کے ساتھ وہ سمجھتے ہیں بولیاں سب کی. وہ بھی بھرتے ہیں جھولیاں سب کی. ارے وہ سمجھتے ہیں بولیاں سب کی. آؤ بازار مصطفیٰ کو چلے
سبحان اللہ.
آؤ بازار مصطفیٰ کو چلے گئے. آؤ بازار مصطفیٰ کو چلے. کھوٹے سیکھے وہی پہ چلتے ہیں. یہ کرم ہے حضور کاغوں پر. آنے والے عذاب ٹلتے ہیں اور اپنی اوقات صرف اتنی ہے. ارے کچھ نہیں بات صرف اتنی ہے. کچھ نہیں بات صرف اتنی ہے. عقیدے والا شعر بلند آواز سے کہیے گا کہ قلب ٹکڑوں پہ ان کے پلتے تھے. قلب ٹکڑوں پہ ان کے پلتے تھے. بولو قلب ٹکڑوں پہ ان کے پلتے تھے. اور اب بھی ٹکڑوں پہ ان کے پلتے ہیں. اور آخری شعر لکھتے ہیں کہ ذکر سرکار کے اجالوں کی بے نہایت رفعت خالد. یہ اجالے کبھی نہ سوٹیں گے. یہ وہ سورج نہیں جو ڈھلتے ہیں. آؤ بازار مصطفیٰ
नहीं आ रही है चेक करो हूँ आ रही है नहीं हूँ आ रही हूँ माइक नहीं से लगी बस मेरी कौन सुन रहा है
Bismillah. We're going to start the question and answer session with Shaykh Rashid. Let me speak open. Anyone who wants to ask a question anytime during the time that we have, you can ask a question anytime. Stand up, put your hand up, I want to ask a question. You are open to ask a question. No one is bound. At any time, Bismillah, ask a question. So, if I ask the first question, I will try and make it more interactive, not just a speech, more interactive with the audience and the instructor. So the first question is, okay, the role of mosque and Sufism in modern Britain. So your Mahfuz Zamir, what do you think the role of mosque and Sufism is in modern Britain?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The question, I'll repeat the question again. The question is regarding the role of Sufism, Tasawwuf and Masajid today in Britain. Firstly, with regard to the Masajid, the first masjid which was established was the masjid of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Al-Madinah al-Munawwara. Of course, there were masajid before that, but what I mean is that the masjid, Al-Masjid al-Nabawi al-Sharif, was established by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam led and had the role of Imam al-Masjid, but also the role of what is known as al-Imamah or al-Imamatul Kubra, which is political leadership. From the masjid, the religious affairs were organized and the worldly affairs. So the companion who had only a small amount of food to live, where would he go to complain? He would go to the masjid. And he would say, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I am in need of marriage, or I am in need of wealth or food. And the role of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an imam was to distribute the food. We know, for instance, the famous hadith of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left him to guard the food at night. Why was the food sadaqatul fitr placed in the masjid, in a place in the masjid? That food was then distributed amongst the fuqara. And this continued throughout the caliphate. In the Khilafah of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, the Caliphate of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, for instance, from Bahrain, when they received thousands of silver coins, Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu had the coins distributed in the masjid. But later, in the time of Banu Umayyah, and throughout the Islamic centuries and various kingdoms and caliphates, the role of the masjid decreased and the political role was separated from the masjid. So the courts, for instance, were established outside of the masjid because punishments were not given in the masjid or in the courtyard of the masjid. So the role of the masjid decreased. So some people, sometimes they read the hadith and they say the masjid must have more of a role than just prayer, and they give citations of those hadith. But what they do not understand is that as time went by, the population increased, the Baytul Mal was removed from the masjid because the security decreased. And they, for instance, in Al-Jami' al-Umawi, the Baytul Mal was separated from the masjid itself. So then we come into 21st century Britain. That firstly, Islam came here for the majority of people through migration, and the masajid are established based upon public funds. So what role do we have today in these masajid that we establish? Firstly, the masajid, aside from the 5 daily prayers that we perform, the masajid have the role of the Muslim community. Right of the masjid over those people. One of the rights is that the comfort of the masjid must be better than the homes in that locality. Yes? That's an obligation.
So it should be built very beautifully, the masjid.
It depends. So if you go to Mauritania,
I want hadith here that some people cite the hadith that the sign of Qiyamah will be, the masjid will be very beautiful, and people will come to the masjid just to see the masjid.
There's 2 points which I was going to mention as well. That sign you mentioned, يَتَبَاهَ النَّاسُ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ, that people will be competitive in masajid. And another one mentions another sign, zakharif, ornamenting the masajid. But the hadith mentions also قُلُوبُهُمْ خَرِبًا, their hearts will be, meaning khariba is what a place which is derelict. Their hearts will be derelict. What is the sign? There's a fiqh of this hadith. Number one, it's disliked, makruh, to spend on a masjid in an area where there is poverty, where people do not have basic food, they do not have clothing, they do not have shelter. But the fiqh is that in an area where the people are, they have homes, well-established people, that they have homes which are decorated. The masjid standard must be 1 daraja, 1 grade above the homes of the people. So this varies. That's the fiqh of the hadith. It varies from, if you go Mauritania, people who live in tents will have a masjid that the standard of which would not be accepted in the UK or in Saudi Arabia or in any oil-rich Gulf state. The standard of the masjid must be 1 grade better than the standard of the homes of that locality. Secondly, the hadith is telling us 2 signs. One is that the intention behind ornamenting the masjid is competition, which is haram. Competition and boastfulness, because the hadith states يَتَبَاهَ النَّاسِ, which is boastfulness and competitive behavior, ostentation. And the second is that قُلُوبٌ خَرِبًا, their hearts will be derelict, meaning they will build the masjid nicely, but their hearts, and in another hadith, it states the rows they will have gaps in their rows, and their hearts will despise one another, because by making gaps in the rows, it causes a spiritual disease, which is the spiritual disease of hatred. That they will have hatred towards one another. So this is one of the huquq of the masjid, that the people in the locality, they must make the standard of the masjid 1 daraja better than the locality. But what is the right of the people? Firstly, dissemination of ilm, of Quran and Sunnah. Ilm is Quran and Sunnah. And secondly, the establishment of the prayer. So this is where the role of Sufism comes in, because Sufism, Tasawwuf, some people, some detractors, some critics have attempted to portray my views as being antithetical to Tasawwuf, when this is incorrect. Tasawwuf is a part of our deen.
So could you just, in a nutshell, explain what is Sufism? When I say Fulanabanda Sufi, what does that mean? When I
So, Tasawwuf, firstly, when Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, when he entered the majlis of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he inquired regarding 4 things. One was regarding al-Islam, the second was al-Iman, the third was al-Ihsan, and the fourth was the Day of Judgment. And then when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Mal mas'ulu anha bi'a'lama min as-sa'il," the questioner and the one being questioned are equal in this regard. He then inquired regarding ashratu sa'at, the signs of the end of times. So these are 4 aspects of our deen. The first one, al-Islam, is what we refer to as al-fiqh, jurisprudence, which relates to everyday acts of worship and muamalat, dealings, and also al-ahwal al-shakhsiyah, which is a personal law, like marriage and other things. The second, which is al-Iman, is creed, belief, aqaid. The third, al-Ihsan, is the spiritual welfare. This became known as tasawwuf. Others refer to it as tazkiyah. Now, tasawwuf is a discipline, is a science that was retained by its masters and will always be retained and disseminated. What does it disseminate? It disseminates the correct teachings of how to bring the spiritual and emotional aspects of a human being closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam described this, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك, which means what? That you worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you do not see Him, then no, He sees you. This is a spiritual state. For instance, we prayed Salah now. When you prayed your Salah, did you feel halawatul iman, the sweetness of faith in your Salah? Did you feel at-taqarrub ila Allah, the closeness to Allah? This sweetness is what is inculcated by the Sufi master in the adept, in the student. This sweetness and closeness, which is described in the Quran, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub." Behold, with the remembrance of Allah, the heart finds what? Tum'anina, which is what? Tranquility, which is stillness, calmness. This closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what tasawwuf inculcates in the balina, bringing them close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making them taste halawatul iman, the sweetness of faith.
So can I ask a question here? Now look, me as an imam or the muqtadis or the committee members that who run the mosque, we could say that we try to be the best person, we try to act upon the rules and the shara'it of tasawwuf. How do we get there? How do I become a practical Sufi at the same time bringing Muslim?
Firstly, before we become practical Sufis, we must become practical Muslims. Yes?
Yeah.
So if someone, meaning we act upon the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Sharia, the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, relates to the outward and the inward. The outward is the acts of worship. The inward is, for instance, tackling amradul qalb,
Yes.
the diseases of the heart,
Yes.
which are listed by some of the ulama as being over 40 diseases of the heart,
Yeah.
which is fard on every Muslim to know regarding the ailment and its cure. Now the lay person is unable to know, meaning how many lay people are there who are able to sit there and read a book on the 40 ailments and practice that. The answer is not many.
Actually, could you elaborate on the story? What does layman mean when we say
So
layman?
a layman, again, this term is the term layperson is in reference to those who are not referred to as ulama or advanced students of knowledge, talabatul ilm. So the layperson would be someone who is not an alim of the religion or is not an advanced student of the religion. With non-Arabs, in our culture, we would say someone who is unable to extract the legal ruling from the works of fiqh, jurisprudence, the works of the tafasir, the commentaries of the Quran, the commentaries of hadith. And generally we recognize someone who has studied something from their access to the Arabic books and the books of religion. But of course this is a relative term. It's relative to the community. Sometimes you may have an alim who does not know Arabic, but you will not refer to him as a jahil. He's an alim. He's an alim relative to his audience. So there was some ulama in the past, recent past, who never knew Arabic proficiently. But they were ulama to their audience because their audience were lay people, who were rural people, who knew basic. He was able to extract legal rulings from Urdu books for them correctly. So for me, that person is still an alim, even though the term is what? Relative. But then you'll have more advanced ulama. So in this regard, lay people cannot necessarily read a book on the Amrad al-Qalb and the Tasawwuf, so they would need the guidance of ulama, people who can guide them in the correct way. This is where the formulation of turuq, the formulation of Sufi orders, the inception of Sufi orders initiated. That those who were trained by a Sufi master, they would train others. And the purpose of a Sufi master is to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how you know you are in a correct Sufi order is firstly like Shaykh Muhammad al-Hashimi rahimahullah. He passed away in 1961 in Damascus. He was Algerian. He taught the people Ibrahim in Al-Jami al-Umawi. But at the same time, he inculcated dhikrullah, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and trained many people, the likes of Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Shaghuri and others, rahimahullah, trained many people in the Sufi path. Now, in Britain, the role of Sufi orders is firstly to teach people the correct belief, that in the sense, now when I say correct belief, some people think this is only relates to some tenets of faith, when in reality it relates to strengthening iman in Allah, conviction, strengthening iman in Allah, in the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in Al-Quran al-Kareem, in the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because today, in today's globalized world, we face multiple challenges that people are not only bombarded with subsidiary issues, they are bombarded with things that attack the very foundation of our faith. So a Sufi guy must firstly strengthen the iman of the adept, increase their halawatul iman, sweetness in faith, increase their piety and acting upon the Sharia, inwardly and outwardly. And there's a process of this. And if anyone is a claimant to being a Sufi guide in Britain today, their success is measured in accordance with their results. Meaning the results, are they inculcating love of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hearts of people, increasing them in dhikrullah, uniting the hearts, not dividing people, and also making them feel the sweetness of ibadah when they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we have many claimants of tasawwuf. If all the claimants were living correctly to their claim, then your masjid at Fajr time would be full. Yes? Remember something. A person who is principled in his faith will earn the respect of other faiths because of his adherence to his own faith. Yes? So people are respectful of the fact that we do not celebrate other religious festivals. We should make that very clear, because celebrating their festivals entails shirk, polytheism. So, and it's not offensive not to do so. It's not offensive. So for anyone to feel that they have offended a person of another faith by not celebrating their religious celebrations, they have misunderstood those people. A Hindu will not be offended by the fact that you do not celebrate his celebrations of Diwali and other things. Likewise with Christmas. So as Muslims, what we do is that firstly, we celebrate our own commemorations, our own celebrations, and we invite non-Muslims to those celebrations, to participate with us in Eid, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha. When we invite them to our celebrations, this will communicate to them that we are accommodating for all peoples, that we are accommodating of all races, all ethnicities, and people of all faiths, inviting them to our celebrations. So we invite them to Eid al-Fitr, we invite them to Eid al-Adha, we invite them to Mawlid. There's nothing wrong with inviting them to our masajid to participate in our celebrations. But those who attend, they will attend because they ascribe to a secular worldview, where they attend the religious festivals of all religions. Those who refuse to attend, they are like us, that they are what firm upon their faith. So we do not become offended if a Christian refuses to attend our events. So this is with regard to the religious commemorations. As for non-religious commemorations, which have no religious aspect to them at all, then we can congregate with them in non-religious celebrations, or in anything which does not entail an infringement of our usuluddin, our principles of religion. So this is something very important to realize. I heard in Dublin, there was a man, an imam of a masjid, someone informed me of this, that he had the LGBT flag in the masjid. So meaning this is accommodating these type of concepts to a totally different.
Some people were on Facebook, you know, when the vaccine started, vaccination, the Facebook photo, the profile was, I saw the Imam of Oldham, he had a picture, and it was the LGBT logo around his face. The profile for Facebook that I vaccinated was that the NHS side, then the logo, then the Imam with your own picture.
So the Imam must have avoided this and should avoid such a thing. It may have been a mistake on his part, but the point is that avoiding such actions or displays, displaying yourself in such a manner in which contradicts the tenets of our faith. This is absolutely important. For instance, the Imam of a masjid should not participate in Christmas celebrations. He should not participate in Easter celebrations. He must not participate in Diwali. This is absolutely haram, absolutely haram. And the Imam of the masjid must avoid this at all costs. Similarly, the committees, they can invite non-Muslims to our own celebrations and to participate in Eid, and we must not become offended if they refuse to attend. Likewise, we are permitted to attend everything which is neutral. So there are neutral events which are neutral to all people.
So can I have the Jumala Motor in the middle? Okay, we have this dispute that comes every year around 25th of December. Can a taxi driver or a person who goes to work and he's got his colleagues there, staff members there, can he say Merry Christmas?
No, this would be impermissible. What the taxi driver should do is when he meets these people, firstly, very rarely do you hear Eid Mubarak from a non-Muslim, unless they are very familiar with our religion. But when they are celebrating, you can give them a gift, not on the 25th, on a different date, but not as a Christmas gift.
24.
With a different intention, and also when you greet them, don't give the greetings of the Christians. You give them the greetings of a Muslim. Say, we as Muslims are more happier than you regarding the birth of Isa alayhi salam. And they will be surprised. How are you more happier? Say to them, meaning engagement is very important.
Yeah.
And taxi drivers are very good at engaging with their passengers. They should say, we celebrate Isa alayhi salam every day. Secondly, you have made Christmas a secular celebration. No longer is Christmas a celebration about Isa alayhi salam, it's a celebration about Coca-Cola and Father Christmas. Yes. So these kind of interactions are very important, and a person should interact in such a manner. This is being realistic.
Yeah.
Meaning some people may say you're being unrealistic. No, by you not celebrating Christmas, you do not endanger your job or endanger your status.
I was about to ask a question.
Okay. Christmas.
As Hafiz mentioned about not saying Merry Christmas to, as you said, not saying Merry Christmas to a Christian about his day, can we at least say congratulations to their special day?
The problem with that is, let's say you have a Hindu boss and he's celebrating Diwali and you say congratulations, it's congratulating him on shirk. Yes, polytheism, I mean, it's the idea of polytheism is absurd. So by congratulating them, we are only congratulating them on shirk. So again, with wisdom, a person can circumvent such situations and congratulate them for, in a different way. How you say to them, congratulations on the fact that you believe in Jesus as we believe in Jesus, with the exception that you believe he is God, which we believe he was not the Son of God and he was in fact the Messiah. Meaning there are ways of phrasing things in order to avoid an awkward situation. Now some people, to avoid an awkward situation, will even drink wine. This happens, that they are in a Christmas party and they are offered wine and they actually drink the wine. Or they will stand under mistletoe and they will kiss a woman. Yes, this happens to people, but a believer in these type of situations avoids acting upon the haram, the muharramat. Some people, they have non-Muslim relatives and they may go to their home and the non-Muslim relatives will have alcohol on the table. Are they permitted to eat with them? The answer is yes, but they do not eat from the haram. Yes, meaning you have a new Muslim, he accepts Islam, he goes to his non-Muslim parents' home on Christmas Day. Is he allowed? The answer is yes, but with what intention? The intention to visit his parents. Yes, not to celebrate Christmas, to visit his parents, but he avoids the haram, the muharram foods.
Yeah. By the way, he has a first.
So if you talk about the mosque and Sufism, so what is the role of Imam in a local masjid?
So the role of the Imam, again, aside from leading the prayers, the second most important role is instruction and teaching. Instruction and teaching. Instruction in what regard? Instructing the people with regard to their, firstly, their beliefs. They need to know their beliefs. Secondly, with regard to their fiqh, jurisprudence. This includes salah, praying 5 times a day, the fasting in the month of Ramadan, distribution of zakat. If the people are going hajj, to teach them the ahkam of hajj. And likewise, rules of talaq, laws of marriage, laws of trade, muamalat, laws of inheritance, instructing the people in this regard. This is the most important role of the Imam.
Coming back to the same question before going to Christmas. Kids are doing these school plays in the school and they are participating in that because they're part of a group and all that. Is that permissible?
So the questions regarding nativity plays and Christmas celebrations in schools, the problem is that parents are not exercising their right in this country. So if you go on the government website, you have every right to withdraw your children from certain religious celebrations. You have that right in this country. From RS classes also, you can withdraw your child. So what parents should do and must do is visit the school and remember the schools are not the problem. The problem is the ignorance of the community with regard to the law. The law of this country entails that if you do not want your child to sit in certain religious classes, you have every right to exercise that right. So nativity plays, you can have the right to remove them from those plays. To participate in any religious festival, you have every right to do that. And likewise, the Christians have the right to remove Christian children from Muslim celebrations. They have the right also. How you explain this to Christians is that if there was a school opened by Muslims, and every morning we had assembly, and in the assembly we recited Kalimatu Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Sayyiduna Muhammadur Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we made all the children utter these testimony of faith, including the Christian children, would they not be offended? I think they would be offended. And additionally, it's not permitted in our religion. In our religion, we cannot enforce our faith upon children of other people of other faiths. This is why in the Khilafah, the Ahlul Zimma, they are not permitted to, we are not permitted to teach the children of Ahlul Zimma the Quran. We are not permitted to teach the children of the Christians the Quran. Why? Because this is enforcing the religion upon them and curtailing their rights to freedom of religion. So we must exercise our rights. So if you go on the government website, you'll find the law relating to excluding your children from religious services.
But now come back to the top question. Relating to this same topic, there is another thing, like I got a letter last week. There will be school Christmas dinner at school. Will be provided by school. All students participate in that, have their food. So that allows for the children to have...
Again, you have the right to
withdraw
them. So you mention that and you withdraw your child. Why? Because it normalizes Christmas. What happens, Al-Imam Jalaluddin As-Suyuti rahimahullah, in his book on Bid'ah, Innovation, he states regarding Christmas that Christmas occurs in winter time. And in winter time, the days are short, the daylight hours are short, and the night is long, and it is cold. So when Christians place their candles and lights and fires, it seems cozy. Ask the children, they will tell you, the Santa Claus, Father Christmas, the Christmas lights, it gives a cozy feeling. Then they have the presents, and what happens, a love for Christmas is inculcated in their hearts. Likewise, with Christmas movies. So during that season, they place movies on the television with novels. Raymond Briggs' book, Father Christmas, the comic book, The Snowman. These are the books kids are made to read. It gives a cozy feeling and it normalizes Christmas. We as Muslims should do what? We must normalize Mawlid, normalize our celebrations and commemorations. Rajab, 27th of Rajab, the day of Hijrah also. There are Muslims in Makkah who celebrate the day of migration of the Prophet ﷺ. And of course the two Eids and the month of Ramadan, and inculcate love in the hearts of the children for those things and explain to them why we do not celebrate Christmas. Explain to them the history of Christmas. Break the dream and fantasy that Santa Claus is not real. Tell them he's not real. And all those Coca-Cola adverts are false.
Coming to a question that I read in a book called The Traveling Home, he had a statement, and then I made a question out of the statement. So he predicted that liberal democratic Europe and openness is in decline. And this was more apparent due to the pandemic. So my question is, how should mosques respond? And secondly, what should a mosque do to be more open to the community?
There's two things. One is the decline of liberal European openness. Europe was never liberal. Europe was never liberal. Any claims to being liberal are false. Look at France and the history of France. The most tolerant may be Germany, but I believe Britain is more liberal than mainland Europe. So as Muslims living in Britain, we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we live in a country which is better than mainland Europe. The openness, I believe also, the people who live in this country, whether they, meaning there's no such thing as indigenous Britons, no such thing, because you have Anglo-Saxons. Prior to them you had the Celts, and after the Anglo-Saxons you had the Norman invasion, and then you had the Pakistani invasion of 1950, yes, and the West Indian invasion. So West Indians are Pakistanis and Indians. We have become a part of Britain, so we are now British.
Yeah.
Whether people like this or not.
Not Pakistani, not Indian, not Bangladeshi.
No, we are British, because Britain as an identity is not a racial identity. Even though people claim it as such, it's not a racial identity, historically speaking. It's an amalgamation of various bloodlines. Even the Queen, that ancestry goes back to Germany. Yes, so they changed the House of Windsor. What was the House of Windsor known prior? A German name. They changed the name to make it sound more English, the House of Windsor. So there is no problem of deeming yourself as British. Even with this new law, if you are exiled, you will always remain English. Why? You studied Macbeth in school, you studied Romeo and Juliet, meaning, I'm not speaking about the people who were born abroad and they were raised abroad. Those of us who were raised here. So the English, Scottish, and the Irish, who are always ignored, they are open to Islam. Shall I tell you the problem? The problem is us Muslims. Why do I say this? If we acted upon our faith, we would be like those Indonesian, we would be like those Yemenis who went to Indonesia and Malaysia, and they went to Gujarat in India, and people only accepted and adopted Islam because of their honesty. They were honest in trade. When they saw the honesty, they accepted Islam. We've been here for some of us have been here from the late 1800s, the Yemeni community. Some of our Kashmiri community have been here from the early 1900s. Some of us came in the 1930s, some of us came in the 1950s.
One of our committee members, Haji Radwan, is not here today. He's been here since the 1950s.
Yes, so my family was here from the 1950s also.
He met Mufti Ahmad Khan Naimi
in London when he visited London in Pakistan. So the point being that if we acted upon our religion like the Yemeni traders, the population of this country would be open to Islam. So this is where the role of Sufism comes. That how many Sufi masters entered India and the people of India adopted Islam in their thousands. In Ajmer, yes, and in Lahore and other places. So where are all those people in the United Kingdom?
How can we do that in the UK? So if Ishaq comes, or someone like you comes, or whoever, how can we adopt those principles in the UK?
It's firstly by purifying ourselves inwardly and outwardly. Meaning the ruh has an effect. The ruh of a person has an effect. So there have been people in the past who have made many English people adopt Islam. Recently I went to Khatm al-Quran for the late Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Sufi, rahimahullah, passed away. Sunni Muslim.
His book is on Sufism.
He has numerous books. He's a Sufi Shaykh.
I see your post on about the book Sufism, his book. Yeah, it's a very thick book.
So he went to, he passed away recently, and I went to the Khatm al-Quran. I was invited by some of what they refer to as Fuqara, which is the Murid. The Khatm al-Quran was held in Bradford Masjid, in one of the masajid constructed at the order of Bir Ma'ruf Sahib. Yes. When I entered the masjid, what I observed is firstly the masjid was full with mainly English, meaning what we say white Muslims. Yes, white Muslims, mainly. They sat in a circle and they done dhikrullah. When they finished, Salatul Isha time came. Salatul Isha time came, many of them were young men. So people were making the rows at the front. Some of the young people, what do young people do? Young people talk. People were talking. One of the elderly men from the Pakistani community shouted at them in a really loud voice that people became frightened. Yes? At that point, I went and complained to the masjid committee about the old man. Firstly, how accommodating are our masajid to English-speaking Muslims? Not accommodating at all. Secondly, we've had a Khatm al-Quran, their guide, their Shaykh has passed away. A person must show more empathy and appreciate the fact that they utilized one of the main masajid in Bradford for the Khatm al-Quran and be accommodating and welcoming. But this old man shouting at them, in fact, I was more offended than them. And it happens many times with younger people, like younger people sitting at the back, they're talking. Should we shout at them? The answer is no. They are young people. Meaning, in fact, many of them hearing this might feel embarrassed and stop talking. But the point being that we should be happy these young people are even in the masjid. Yes? Let them talk. The fact that they are in the masjid, we should appreciate that they could go to Manchester, the famous road, Winslow Road, and do haram. Or go to other places in Manchester and do haram. But the fact that they are in the masjid, this is why sometimes I say to some of my students, you people are awliya. Awliya of Allah. And they become surprised. And I say, as long as you're praying your 5 daily prayers, respecting your parents, not doing any haram, you're awliya of Allah. They say, how? I said, living in a free and open society, you choose to attend classes. Yes? So we should appreciate these young people. So, with regard to English Muslims, how accommodating are our masajid towards English-speaking Muslims and non-Muslims? I say English-speaking because now, with the new generation, you will have brown-skinned people who do not know Urdu, Mirri, Patwari, Punjabi, Sindhi, Balochi, Bengali, Hindi. Yes? And any other language. They will only know English. So they are English Muslims. So how accommodating are our masajid in the English language? This is very important. This is why even when I entered, you speaking in Urdu, I observed that there were Arfi people who do not know Urdu. So I said, why is he speaking in Urdu? The language of the masjid in this country must now be English. The majority of the activity must be English. Now for many years, 7-8 years, I delivered English lectures in a very famous masjid in Birmingham, Ziyal Quran Masjid, on St. Saviour's Road and Boy Road. Very famous masjid. Some of the old men complained. They said, why, these old men were in their 70s, 80s and 90s. Why is he speaking in English? So another old man said to them, why are you wasting away the new generation? That you will have an imam who speaks in Urdu, but your younger children will not understand, eventually they leave the masjid. So never mind just opening the masajid to English Muslims, what about the younger children who are from minority groups? We must accommodate for them in the English-speaking language. So the first step, answering your question, the first step in dawah after tazkiyah is doing everything in the language of the people. Unless you're such a wali that you can go to a place and impress the people with your piety to such a degree they all become Muslim. without you communicating. Yes? So the first step is communication.
First of all, a very beautiful answer of you about younger people as well as the answer of Maulisa. And I got two questions. First of all, about December, where Christmas is taking place. My question is it allowed to enjoy December as its atmosphere with lights and snow, not taking the intention of enjoying Christmas? Is it allowed to do that? That's my first question.
Second question.
And second question is about business, stock markets and shares.
That's slightly off. We go back to the stock market. So with regard to the first question, he says, are we allowed to enjoy the snow and the atmosphere in December time? The answer is as long as there's no resemblance to acts of kufr and shirk. As long as there's no resemblance to acts of kufr and shirk. That's the simple answer to your question. The second question was
about stocks and shares. Is it allowed to invest in them as long as you know the principles of if the business is, or the company is doing the right thing, investing in the right thing, or is it investing in the wrong things?
in such a case, when you know they are investing in the right things, it would be permissible. So if you bought shares in Amazon, would it be haram? The answer is no.
What about cryptocurrency?
With regard to cryptocurrency, I personally advise people not to invest into cryptocurrency. I believe it's a pyramid-style system and people will lose money because very few people actually pull out the money. So they wait for the currency, the value of the currency to increase, but then suddenly the currency will crash and they lose their money.
Shall I come back to the honey?
Islam. I just want to ask a question. People say that you're not allowed to read namaz behind the other figures, such as Deoband or whatever and whatever. Are we allowed to do that, or if we do it, is our namaz be done or not?
The question is, are we allowed to pray behind other firaq sects? Are we allowed to pray behind Deobandis? The answer is, if you were allowed to pray behind them, why have we made our own masajid? We should all have one masjid.
Wow.
Yes. If we were permitted to pray behind Wahhabis, then we should have one masjid with them. But why have we made our own masajid, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah masajid? The reason why we have made Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is so our prayer is correct. Now the problem is that some of them even wipe upon their socks before in wudu. According to us, the salah is not done. Likewise, the Shia, they wipe upon their feet. They wipe on the feet. They don't wash the feet. So according to us, the salah and the wudu is not done. So therefore, we have our own Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'at masajid in which we pray.
Obviously, you said two different things. But if we've done the wudu properly, like you said, we wash our feet and everything, but we stand behind them, they are reading the same Quran and everything, so where are we standing there?
So, your knowledge of the sect, how much would you say you know about them? You personally?
Not much.
You don't know much. So, your ruling would differ from mine. Because I know so much, my ruling is different. Your knowledge, I gave this answer on live television. Someone made an imbecile made some issue about this. So I will clarify this in detail. That for instance, Haji Sahib, I come across a lot of lay people like yourself. And they say to me, all we know is that we are Barelvi and they are Deobandi. And we don't know anything more than this. Isn't that the case? If that's your state of knowledge, first it's incumbent on you to learn more knowledge. Yes? So the answer I'm going to give you will be different to the answer I give Hafiz Sabiya. Because he has more knowledge regarding this issue. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Subtlety. So there was one imbecile. He attempted to say, I permit people to pray behind all the groups. I do not say this. I live in the real world. So I deal with various types of people. So I said, you are asked according to your level of knowledge. So the answer I'm going to give you, Haji Sahib, would be that if you believe they are deviant and you know they are deviant, then you must repeat your prayer. Yes? But if you say, I don't have knowledge of what a Deobandi is, I don't know anything, then I will first say, when you learn more knowledge, then the answer changes. Is that clear to everyone?
One question related to this, especially in the young generation nowadays, they said that there's no sect, whatever you get, the right thing from the right person, you get it.
Yes, so another major problem is importing, everyone listen to this, sectarian disputes from foreign places onto British soil. So what happens, a man from Karachi who is a part of Sipai Sahaba or various sectarian groups, like the Shia has one as well, he migrate to the UK and he treat the UK as if he is living in Karachi. Yes, this leads to more sectarian issues. And then what happens is the young people become confused. The young people become what? Confused. Because there are 100 identities, they don't know which one to identify with. So how do you as the Imam remedy this problem? How you remedy this problem is sticking to the classical Sunni Aqidah works like Al-Aqidah Al-Tahawiyah, yes, Shar al-Aqaid, classical works, and teaching the young people classical Sunni Islam. When they learn Sunni Islam, they themselves will be able to make a distinction who is right and who is wrong. Yes? A second thing to add to Haji Saab's point. I'm walking through Heathrow Airport, and this happens. And Salah time comes, and there's a man leading Salah. There is a man what? Leading Salah. Am I obliged to go up to him and say, are you Sunni or Deobandi? Are you Salafi or Sunni? Or can I accept him on the outward and pray my Salah? What is, you're the Imam of this masjid. What's the Hukum Shari? The Hukum Shari is if I pray my Salah is what? Okay. Done. But as soon, if I find out after this man, he curses the Sahaba, or he does another thing which is really bad, what should I do then? Repeat my Salah. So this is what I meant, that it's in accordance with the knowledge of the Muqtadi, the person who prays. And the answer will differ from the level of a person in his fahm, his understanding. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu reports, كَلِّمُ النَّاسَ عَلَىٰ قَدْرِ عُقُولِهِمْ. Communicate with people according to their level of intellect. But there are some people who have no intellect and communicate to everyone with one monolithic intellect.
One question related to this. There are hundreds of people available in social media now, like the speakers, the Muslim speakers. Would you please name some of the Sayyid Aqidah speakers beside you?
The problem with that is, if I do that, I may miss out some speakers, and you may think that the ones I miss out, you may think they are deviant. Yes. Firstly, in Urdu, I do not listen to anyone. From those who are alive, I do not listen to Urdu speeches any longer. In Arabic, I listen to only 2 public speakers from those who have passed away. A Shaykh Mutawalli al-Sha'rawi and a Shaykh Ramadan al-Bhuti, and some audio recordings of a Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin and other Mashayikh. But in English, I do not listen to anyone also. So it would be unfair of me to name people that these are reliable, because if I miss out the names of other people, people would
just
think...
you for guidance.
In English, you mean?
Yeah.
In English, are you familiar with any good public speakers?
Someone like Hamza Yusuf.
You would recommend it? See,
I think that this topic is going to be very, very disputed. It's going to cause a chaos on social media. Okay, already Shaykh is under scrutiny. Right? So, coming back to the topic, I'm going to come back to the topic now. Achha, what should an imam do to have a good relationship with the namazis of the masjid?
you see, one thing I'll tell you as Imam.
Should be opposite.
Should be the opposite.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing as an Imam is that you will never satisfy your namazis. If your foot is slightly bent, they will point out, Imam, why was your foot slightly bent? If your beard is slightly uncommon, they'll say, why is his beard? So the Imam can never satisfy the muqtadi. Satisfy Allah, meaning please Allah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You not satisfy, please Allah.
Yes.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the people pleased with you. Yes. Why qulubul ibad bayna usbu'ay ar-Rahman? The hearts of the servants are between what? Usbu'ay ar-Rahman. Meaning the two fingers of Allah. Not two fingers as in limbs.
Yeah.
As the two sifat of Allah, the two attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you please Allah.
That.
In today's society, what activities are permissible that attract you into the mosque?
So in our masjid, we have a games room, we have pool tables. I don't know, some of these so-called muftis may even say pool tables for youngsters are haram. I mean, you have to deal with these kind of narrow-minded individuals. But pool tables, we have tennis table, we have a basketball, we have football in an open hall. So games, one games room.
Yeah.
But you don't have things like virtual reality, like PlayStation,
Right.
because that really dumbs children down. You should have physical activities like table tennis, snooker, basketball, football, archery is a bit dangerous. They might hit off point, but the point is that you have, one is a games room, second is activities, intellectual activities as well, quizzes for instance.
Yeah.
These are a few things I can mention, but really if you had a games room in the masjid on the side, your masjid will always be filled with young people.
And the next one, what is the role of the committee for the masjid and the community? Committee of the masjid.
So the committee firstly has to realize that the purpose of the committee is not just to accumulate money. For some of these masajid, they have large sums of money in their accounts, but very little of the money is spent. So in one masjid, for instance, the AC broke down. They have over 200,000 in the bank account, but they're doing a collection for the AC. When the purpose of having the 200,000 is to utilize that money for the upkeep of the masjid. So the more money you have in the account does not mean your masjid is successful. Secondly, when they spend money, if they spend on the imam of the masjid, that's the meaning. If they spend on the imam of the masjid, that would entail the imam of the masjid will not go to other places for money. He will give most of his time to where the institute that is employing him.
Yeah.
Yes? So most of his time will be spent in the masjid that is employing him. So if they give him a good, healthy living wage, most of his time is in that masjid and within that community. When committees complain about some imams, they say the imam is always going to a khatam Quran, or he's going to do a nikah without the permission of the committee, meaning on his own accord. Or the imam, why is he doing this for extra petty cash? So the first task of the masjid is to employ the imam with a healthy wage, so he gives all the time to the masjid. Thirdly, if you pay peanuts, you raise monkeys. So you give peanut wages the students he will produce will not be the caliber and quality of students you want for that community. So the people complain, one more complaint is the imam is not qualified. So how do we employ an imam who is absolutely qualified? The answer is you should have one scholar alim of the religion in the committee who has no vested interest, even if he's from another city. So what you do is you place an alim in the committee who vets the alim that you will employ. Yes? And he is then, he is the one who instructs the imam. So sometimes what happens, the imam is late. So this imam may have studied 8 years, 10 years in some university or in madrasa, and when he arrives at the masjid, the committee member who is totally unqualified in religion is telling him off. Yes? And this leads to disputes between the imams and the committee. So how do you remedy this problem? How you remedy the problem is that in the committee you place a scholar, an alim of the deen who does not take any money, service. Like the committee members do fi sabilillah service for the community, the alim of the deen is also a part of the committee. What is the role of the alim? To instruct the imams and to give this, to check the CVs of the imams and to test the tajweed, test the knowledge of fiqh, check the jurisprudence, check the aqidah. All these things is the task of the imam who is placed in the committee board members. Like this, the imam will not interfere in committee affairs. Sometimes you have a problem where the imam starts interfering with committee issues. But if you have an alim of the religion in the committee, the imam cannot interfere in the affairs of the committee, because the committee is taking instruction from a committee member who is also an alim of the deen. Then the imam can concentrate on his duties, on leading the prayer, on teaching. So these are two amendments all committees must do. Increase the wages of the imams and place an alim in the committee so the alim can vet the imam. So there are no clashes between the committee and the imams.
Yeah. The next one is, we see that question.
What is the role of the women in mosque?
I was going to come to that. I'm going to add that. The question I wrote down is that should women be in the committee of the masjid? And can a woman be the, let's say, the committee chairwoman or leader of a committee in the board?
So, firstly, women can be in a committee, masjid committee. This is absolutely permissible. And in fact, it's recommended, because then the women can play the lead role in dealing with women's issues. So many vulnerable women and children come to the masjid, and there are sometimes safeguarding issues. It is better that women deal with women's issues. And therefore, if a masjid has a women's committee to deal with women's issues, it is better. As for being chairwoman or chairman, a chairwoman in this case, I would not recommend that. Why? Because the main role of the masjid is male dominated. Yes, and the chairman sometimes needs to announce things in a male dominated area. But how you can resolve that problem is you can have a chairwoman for the women's section, that a woman who deals with women's issues. So this would be absolutely recommended. Secondly, the facilities for the women in the masjid must be made, like a place area of wudu, and the masjid hall must be expanded for women also. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the women would pray in the back of the masjid, and the men would pray at the front of the masjid. But there were two entrances. One was for the men, and one was Babul Nisa for the women. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, he specified that door for the women, and Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu never entered that door ever again. So what happened later is, in the time Caliphate of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, the women, some of them, and some of the men would flirt. So Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu anha said, if the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had seen this, he would have prohibited them from entering the masajid. So for Saddu Zarai meaning stopping an increase of run, the masajid area for the women is located now separately to the men. This was Saddu Zarai. Some people still keep an area for the women in the masjid. But for Saddu Zariya meaning stopping an increase of fitna, the areas, women's areas were separated. But what I've noticed in West Indies, they had the masjid one hall and they would have a wooden panel which you could not see through. And the women's entrance was separate to the men's entrance. So women had access to the masjid, but the men were unable to see the women, and the women unable to see the men. This is being realistic because it leads to other issues of flirting, of issues of fitna, meaning various types of fitna. So the only solution, the best solution, if you live in a community where there is an absolute demand for a women's section, what you do is you place a wooden panel across the middle of the masjid hall, and you designate one entrance for the women and a separate entrance for the men, and like this women will have an equal right to the masjid like the men. This is the best solution for the entire UK, and it's balanced. It's not the extreme of where women do not have any role, and it's not the extreme of in some masajid now they will have a gathering like this and the women will be sitting in the same hall, visible to the men and visible to everyone. The best solution is that the masjid hall have a panel and the women at the back and the men at the front, if there is a demand for this. But this also relates to the women of that community. So for instance, in this community, the women may not demand this. But after this generation, the elderly generation go, the new generation may demand it. If that demand increases, the only the Sharia method is to place a board across the middle of the masjid and designate two separate entrances. This is based totally on the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because remember one thing, some people say, oh, they had interaction in the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, they did. But what you failed to mention, these people, did the women all wear face veils? The answer is yes. It states very clearly that some of them, some of the Sahabiyat was such that when they wore the face veil, they only had one eye uncovered. That's how covered they were. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the men should wait until the women are departed. Do we have men like that? Do we have women like that? So likewise, some people, they mention the interaction from earlier dates or even later dates, but they never mention the qawl of Sayyidatuna Fatima alayhi salam, where she said, she was asked, who are the best women? She said, the women that the men do not see and they do not see men. So why did they not ever mention Sayyidatuna Fatima radiyallahu anha as being the best role model for women?
Two questions out of this. While talking about women, we got this for men. We got a community hall and then we got far and a room for ladies. Can they pray there for one day or any other day?
The answer is yes, because the room's behind the Imam. As long as they are standing behind the Imam and they can hear the position of the Imam, their prayer is valid.
Distance is no matter.
The distance doesn't matter.
And second thing is that I've been approached by reviewers, men and women. They say what we should do, that we should create for toddlers, we should have a play area where one woman can look after the youngsters and just can play or talk or whatever, or play. And like that, we got a young man, a very nice person, who comes to see us now and again, pray here. But he is, when he converted or reverted, he reverted on another side. Now, we find a bit of problem with him. He is a lovely man. How we can work with him? how we can deal with the situation. Maybe there are a lot of them, when they reverted in any way, they just from outside, everybody looks and thinks that Islam is their study one. So when
How you remedy this problem is what I mentioned, an increase, firstly, of utilizing the English language in the masjid. This is absolutely vital. Even, never mind other sects, Qadianis are a different religion. Yes, they're not Muslims. The Qadianis are more adept in utilizing English than our community in the UK. All the groups, they utilize English. So the first way of resolving this problem is by the English language. Secondly, increasing activities such as this and classes, teaching. Thirdly, love. Because every human being needs love. The more love you will show, you will soften their hearts towards this, to the correct way, inshallah.
Coming to the teaching now, the topic of the masajid is a huge topic. I'm going to put it in a nutshell one question. What should the madrasa teaching of a masjid be, and how, like we go to schools and the same students come back to the masjid and they see a massive difference in the teaching styles. Now, how can a masjid adopt that type of, or remove that kind of contradiction?
This issue, I'll summarize to you. Firstly, it's not haram to use desks and chairs.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
But some people have it in their mind, the more coarse and difficult you feel physically, the more you have achieved. This is incorrect. But how do we resolve this issue of children's madrasa? Firstly, and I gave this advice to some of the madrasas in Birmingham, they've not taken this advice on board yet, but I believe this will be the future model. You should only have madrasa on Saturday and Sunday. So a child spends 7 hours or 6 hours in school and then comes home, barely eats, and then arrives at the masjid to sit in one place for 2 hours where he cannot move. Yes? The correct method is, if you have Saturday and Sunday madrasa, and the parents will be happy because they will have free time for themselves. Unfortunately, many of the parents want free time for themselves. So if you start in madrasa 10 a.m. and you finish at 4 p.m. on Saturday and 10 a.m. Sunday till 4 p.m. Sunday, in that time you will cover the same amount of hours that you cover on the weekday, but the quality will be different. The quality will be different. This is one aspect. Secondly,
can I just add on that point? That's a very good point. As a masjid, not Sunni masjid, but different sect, it's just south of Manchester. The masjid teaches the madrasa, but they distributed the classes in two parts. The elderly children, so let's say 13, 14 above, they come during the week, but the youngsters where the most focus should be on, their classes on the weekend.
So adding to that point, so many of these young people, they read Quran once, they finish the Quran and they leave masjid. So there should be a program for 14 to 18-year-olds on the weekend. So a youngster doing A-levels or studying in college is able to go to the masjid on Saturday and Sunday. Yes? So they do not leave masjid until 18, until they are 18 years old. Thirdly, it is absolutely essential that the teachers are qualified. And how did I say that you check the qualification of those teachers? You check the qualification of those teachers by having a member, an alim of the deen in the committee. who checks the qualification of the teachers. Fourthly, which is absolutely essential, the teacher must be British born. So he can relate to the culture of those youngsters. This is absolutely vital. Fifthly, and I should not be saying this, that the culture of beating children must stop. Because beating children is haram in Sharia.
Yeah.
You cannot use khashab, a stick, to discipline a child.
Yeah.
Yes, it's absolutely haram. And there must be safeguarding guidelines in all the masajid where you have cameras, and the teachers must be completely qualified and they know how to deal with children. So you cannot have beating of children in the masajid. This still happens in some places.
Yeah. Brother Khalid has like 5 questions. If I don't do them, I have to do them. So, how can the tarbiyah of teachers be done? Please give real practice advice.
This is a difficult one because sometimes you have people, they do a 5-year alim course, a 6-year alim course, and they genuinely believe they have become an alim.
Yeah.
I qualified from a madrasa at the hands of Allama Rasul Bakhsaidi, Hafizahullah. And even after qualifying, I continued my studies under ulama for many years. So I did not begin to teach except under a qualified alim. So for at least 4 years, I taught under the guidance of another alim. So the problem is that some people think by doing a 5-year Dars Nizami course or a 6-year or even 8-year course, you become an alim. You do not become an alim, you become a talibul ilm. And even now, I deem myself a talibul ilm. The problem is this relates to spiritual ailments. The spiritual ailments, amradul qalb, unfortunately, this question, the short answer is that a person who is muwaffaq, who is what? Muwaffaq, is only given this ability. Min tawfiq from Allah. Otherwise, it's not a, there's some Sufi orders now, they have a machine, factory settings that you bring in the murid, you give him a set routine, and you produce a wali. Like the factory settings of the mulvis, the madaris in Pakistan, and they are factory mulvis. What's factory mulvis? The people in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa refer to the people who study in Punjab and other areas as factory mulvis. What's a factory mulvi? You have this madrasa that has a set goal. We're going to finish the year in 10 months. We need to finish this much of the book, and they quickly rush the book, and then you do year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, and you have a dastar bandi, and you become an alim. These are factory mulvis. When in reality the course is just to start your studies. If you study 7 years, your studies have just started. I am still studying. I am continuing studying still. Even though I started from the age of 13, 14, 15, young age. But I am still studying. So likewise, you have some Sufi sheikhs who believe that they have factory settings to produce awliya. That's not the case. A wali is beyond that.
This one, I think this is an important one. People see the imam to be that. How do you become that? The question is, what does it mean to produce balanced-minded, middle way, and a non-extremist ulama?
See, the entire question is loaded. Because no, the question is loaded. Why? Because who is to define balance? Who is to say that this is a balanced alim? Meaning, if you fulfill the status quo of certain groups, some of them would refer to you as balanced. So, the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is sufficient to make an individual balanced. How? Famous hadith, the Bedouin entered the masjid, he urinated in the masjid.
Wow.
What was the reaction of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said to the companions, sit down, leave him. Let him finish.
Allah.
When the man finished, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought him summoned him and explained to him the masajid are made for ibadah, they're not made for this action. And he commanded the companions clean the urine, they dug the ground and turned the soil. This is balanced. Yes? Even in warfare, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam found a woman who was dead, she died during the battle, he condemned those who had killed her. So there are so many accounts of this in the Sunnah. Or the Sahabi who was beating his camel severely. And then the camel, this is a miracle, mu'jiza of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The camel complained. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not place burden on your camel. Now if that's a camel, what about these individuals who beat young children? They beat young children. We are prohibited to beat mules and camels. So what's the ruling on beating young children? So how we produce balanced people is that they follow the sunnah. And akhlaq al-ulama is another aspect of this. Like the work of Imam al-Ajuri, rahimahullah, akhlaq al-ulama. In reality, at the beginning stages of their studies, someone told me a nice account. They told me in a certain country, Muslim country, before you start studying, before you are even enrolled into a madrasa, if you go to the madrasa to get enrolled, they will make you serve people for 1 year. Serve people. So you serve tea, you serve food. Like this you acquire, because aql, intellect is two types. One is the natural disposition a person is born with, he's clever, but there is a second type of aql. What is the second type of aql? Acquisition of aql through experience. So you attain, like if you were to serve tea, some of my teachers, they would make the students serve tea, then they would ask, did you rewash the cups, the mugs? They would say no. They would say, give them up. Say when you wash the mugs, rewash them because dust may have accumulated. Simple points that we may have learned from our parents, but some people do not have this upbringing. So they would make them serve the ulama and other people for 1 year. In some cases, even straighten the shoes outside, and then enroll them into the madrasa. An additional point is books like Ta'aleem al-Muta'allim of Imam Zarnuji. Books like the work of Akhlaq, Manners by Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin, or the work of Manners by Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. These type of works like Akhlaq al-Ulama, these type of works should be the first set of works that the person studies with his teacher. Thirdly, teaching those works will inculcate that in the teacher also. So even if he is lacking himself, when he starts teaching these books, he will learn things which he did not know. And the teacher must exemplify and embody those mannerisms. Otherwise, they will produce factory Maulvis with factory akhlaq. Factory akhlaq, meaning qillatul akhlaq, no akhlaq, no adab. No adab of adab al-bahath, discussion, no adab of adab al-ikhtilaf, how to even dispute, how to carry out disputes. There's another, Shaykh Muhammad Awama has a book, Adab al-ikhtilaf, a book on manners of how to even dispute. So 5-year course, part-time as well. 5-year course, part-time as well, does not make you an alim of the deen. It makes you a talib al-ilm. And I've been studying with ulama for well over 2 decades, or accompanying ulama and I do not consider myself an alim or a mufti or anything of the sort. So what about someone who just studies 5 years and they do not have these mannerisms?
Final question. It covers both the community and the imam. Is it necessary for the imam to be a social worker?
To a degree, because unfortunately you do deal with mental patients or people with mental illness, and mental illness in our community is covered. People do not take mental illness seriously enough, and in fact they become embarrassed if there is someone in their family who has mental illness. And many religious people have mental illnesses. That's why you have Khawarij types. Yes? They have mental illnesses. They will come to you as an imam, they will say, oh, I said this statement, am I a kafir now? There was one case from 23 years ago where a particular person would walk around without a ghusl, without bathing. He was in a state of janaba, major ritual impurity. When he was asked, why do you walk around like this? He said, I do not do ghusl because I am no longer Muslim. When he was asked, why are you no longer Muslim? He would say, because I uttered such and such statement and therefore I am a kafir. This became a mental illness until the person became so depressed, he became isolated at home, he suffered from mental depression, his family blamed religious people. And you would know that some of these religious people cannot even behave normal. Like they cannot have a normal conversation. Some religious groups are just about ikhtilaf. Just about what? Ikhtilaf. Nothing else. This is not good for people's mental health. Because ikhtilaf has its place. Disputes have their place. Time and place. So when they have those mental health issues, it's essential for the imam to deal with that. Secondly, you may deal with divorce cases. Thirdly, you may deal with mental and sexual abuse cases. Fourthly, you may deal with drug addicts. So like this, it's essential for the imam, the masjid should pay for the imam to go on a course that's recognized by the government, to have training as a social worker also. This is absolutely essential.
Any more questions on the, okay, Brother Haris, I'm on the right side. And Brother Haris.
So the question is, how lenient or strict do you need to be in enforcing the rules of the mosque?
Again, we should be polite. That's the main thing. Learn from the English. When you go to a public building that's administered by English people, how do they behave towards those people who break the rules? Are they polite? The answer is yes, from my experience. Yes? Like the courts. So we as Muslims, assertive but polite. Yes? Meaning we should be assertive but polite. That's very essential.
What is the proper way that ulama who have disputes amongst themselves, how should they resolve it, or would you recommend?
So this comes down to the ulama themselves. Unfortunately, you will never resolve many disputes because of nufus. Nufus is what? Egos. So the more egotistical a person is, the less the dispute is resolved. So the Quran mentions that la yazaluna, they will never cease what mukhtalifin. They will never cease dispute. So disputes, the best we can do is decrease the volume of disputes, or not react in the way you can learn from Maulana Ilyas Qadri.
Subhanallah,
Yes.
Subhanallah.
How can you learn from him?
Subhanallah.
The amount of people that have slandered Maulana Ilyas Qadri, Hafizahullah, are innumerable. And in public, really, the man has not done anything which is reprehensible. Yes, there may be some people who have some ikhtilaf in the way maybe he waves from side to side in the naad, okay, It's not an issue of usuluddin or an issue that you slander someone for, but being slandered, people have backbited him, people have wrote against him. How has he responded? With husnul akhlaq. He's a living example, yes? Husnul akhlaq. So I believe from him we can learn many lessons. There are many lessons to learn from him. One of them is how he has reacted to his detractors, how he has responded to his detractors. So he's a person of intellect. Allah has given him abundant intellect, yes? So therefore, the ulama today should not respond in a way which leads to a toxic environment.
Subhanallah. And your brother, Malik.
Assalamu alaikum. So some schools have Christmas food banks, so would it be fine if I give food to the Christmas food bank?
Yeah, the food bank goes to the poor. Yes, yes, so that would be fine.
Any more questions?
Yes.
Andy,
How can we persuade, masjid committees to do something that what should be done, or how we know that they have the right amount of funds and everything behind them, without any dispute or without any going into argument?
So how you do this is, again, with everything there is a due process. So if you call for a formal meeting, first you write a formal letter to demand a formal meeting. You have a formal meeting and you bring those who support you. And in the formal meeting you have a presentation of what are the needs that you think the community has. I believe any sane-minded committee will follow through your guideline. This will happen.
MashaAllah.
And you also do the same with the Imam. Inshallah, that should resolve any disputes.
Because we come into the final now, I think you finish your questions.
Yeah.
One thing is that everybody will come to this door, everybody's got bucket of water. We break with you. Then yes. Secondly, what is your advice to run this masjid? Because my hope, my wish is that this masjid should be a hope for a child, for a teenager, for a young man, for an elder person, for a lady, for a girl. It should be a hope for everybody, how we can achieve that.
So what you intend to do, like you said, to have a room for children, a room for the women, a section, a games room for older children, and also a socializing room for the elderly people. In our masjid now, in Birmingham, we've constructed, alhamdulillah, it's been constructed, a room for the elderly people to socialize and have tea. So rather than talking in the masjid hall, we direct them to that room. We have the games room for the elderly youngsters, the older youngsters, and then we have the main masjid hall. So these are types of things you can do, and your announcements should start now in English, because
they do.
Yes, so we adopt to the new society, because within 10 years to 20 years we will be experiencing a change, a big change within the UK. Within 10 years. Haji Saab, how quick do 10 years go? Do you remember 9/11? 20 years have gone. In another 20 years, I will be an old man with a white beard. Well, I won't be that old, but the point being that a generational change will occur, to which we should be ready to adopt to that generational change. Because Islam is a religion for all times and all places.
Yes. So one very, very important question. I think everyone is affected by it, and I think Shaykh, you've got to deal with it. It's very important. The issue of LGBTQ and children going to school, and they see it and they're hearing it everywhere. How should the masajid respond? What should the duty be?
How we respond is informing and educating. What should we inform and educate of? We should inform and educate regarding, for instance, the harms, the STDs associated with sexual malpractice, even heterosexual sex. The STDs. So this is because of the lack of time. This is, of course, a chapter for a totally different lecture. I'll address this in Ahsan Shah's Masjid as well in Bradford. That the focal point of teaching youngsters regarding STDs of having sex out of the parameters of the adab of Islam, the mannerisms of Islam. Shall we conclude?
Yeah, we do. Inshallah, Shaykh will be coming again Manchester on the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, 12 o'clock Masjid. It will be the coming of Isa alayhi salam topic, and then there's the Qiyamul Layl there as well, where people, the youngsters can stay in the masjid. So you're all invited to attend. Inshallah, we'll be calling Shaykh again on another topic. I think we might need to keep a part 2 of this topic as well. Inshallah. Salatu salam. Inshallah.
مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام شمائے بز میں ہدایت پہ لاکھوں سلام مصطفیٰ جان رحمت پہ لاکھوں سلام آج سہانی گھڑی چمکا طیبہ کا چاند جی سہانی گھڑی چمکا طیبہ کا چاند جی سہانی گھڑی چمکا طیبہ کا چاند اس دل افروز ساتھ پہ مت پہ دعویٰ نہیں ایک میرا ہی رحمت پہ دعویٰ نہیں شاہ کی ساری امت پہ لاکھوں سلام کاش محشر میں جب ان کی آمد غور بھیجے سب ان کی شوکت پہ لاکھوں سلام مجھ سے خدمت کے قدسی کہے رضا مجھ سے خدمت کے قدسی کہے رضا یا نبی سلام علیکہ یا رسول سلام علیکہ یا حبیب سلام علیکہ صلوات اللہ علیکہ طلع البدر علینا من ثنیۃ الوداع وجب الشکر علینا ما دعا للہ داعی یا نبی سلام علیکہ اے خدا کے لاڈلے اور پیارے رسول یہ سلام عاجزانہ ہو قبول
جزا اللہ عنا سیدنا محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وآلہ وسلم ما هو أهله اللهم اشف مرضانا يا رب العالمين اللهم اشفهم شفاء كاملا عاجلا غير آجل يا رب العالمين اللهم اشفهم بشفاء من عندك وبحولك وبقدرتك يا رب العالمين يا شافي أنت الكافي يا رب العالمين اللهم أعنا على أعدائنا أعداء الإسلام يا رب العالمين اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والنعمة الدائمة ودوام النعمة ونسألك المعافى في الصحة والبدن والمال والأهل والأولاد والعرض والعقل والدين وكل شيء يا رب العالمين. اللهم احفظنا من الفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن، واحفظنا من المحن والبلايا التي تخرج من الأرض وتنزل من السماء. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
सब लोग लाइन बना लें इधर ही, क्योंकि जूते लाल को बनाना मुश्किल हो जाएगा, इधर ही आ जाए, ये दरवाजे पे अपना चेक करना
Vice